Hello and welcome back to the channel. And we've covered the Gaelic football action from the weekend, so we're going to move on to the action in the hurling. There it was quite a light program this week, quite a light schedule, but there was still about 8 games across all the different competitions. So start off up in the what was the billed as the All Ireland hurling qualifier matches. So the first one to take place was actually what probably on paper didn't look like a great game between Laois and Clare, but Laois really Laois gave Clare all they wanted. 317 to 27 points for Clare, where most would have probably thought it might have been a Clare comfortable win, but in the end it didn't work out like that. What did you make of it?
Yeah, well, Gerry, it was very, very good performance from Laois. I think that they will see this as very, very much as a missed opportunity, Laois, because they bet Dublin last year, and I suppose they would have gone into this with nothing to fear. But I think Clare won't be too happy, Gerry. I think, though, to be fair, like we were kind of saying in the football, a 1 point win in championship is a very good win. Like, you know, that kind of way. I suppose there's nothing really you'd knock out. Whatever about a 1 point win, Gerry, from a Clare perspective, it's far better than losing the match. You know, that kind of way. Like, so I think it's one of those things, Gerry, where they're playing Wexford now in the qualifiers. If they beat Wexford, there won't be a thing said about it. If Wexford beat them, then Clare, it will have been a very, very bad year for Clare, I suppose. But just to touch on that, like, I think David McInerney got a red card. Well, he did get a red card before half-time, and he's a very, very good hurler. So he's a massive, massive loss. McInerney was he was brilliant when Clare won the All-Ireland in 2013. And we said on these shows before how many good players Clare are missing at the moment. And I just think that I was reading Gerald McNally in the Star there. He said 2 weeks ago Clare are heading the same way as Offaly and going to Joe McDonough in a few years' time. And he kind of really reinforced that view today. And I suppose the facts he had, he had a lot of fact. The record in Munster under 21 has been very poor. Now, I actually think, Gerry, if Clare had all their players fit at the moment and available, they'd be as good as any team in Ireland. I think that they won the 3 All-Ireland under 21s between 2012 and 2014. And that's really kind of, they had a very, very good core of players. And I suppose the youngest of those players now at 6 years ago under 21 will be 27. I think Gerard Mann's point was that from 26 and under ages groups, there's very, very little talent in Clare at the moment. Well, he didn't say that in Dover, but it was kind of like that they wouldn't be getting on other teams in the Liam McCarthy race, those younger players in the team. So, look, Gerry, the facts don't lie. Clare's under 21 record in Munster has been very, very poor in recent years, you know. So I don't think that I think long term there probably is a slight worry for Clare hurling, but just going back in that match, Laois are County, they've put a lot of structures in place, like Laois, and Eddie Brennan has improved them an awful lot. And they were questioning some refereeing decision at the weekend now, but they scored 317. I think they were probably disappointed. They didn't play terribly against Dublin the first day, but the 14-point margin didn't do themselves justice at the moment against Dublin. And I think they probably did themselves a wee bit more justice on this occasion. But I suppose the main thing to take from the game is that Clare, okay, a win's a win, but I think, as I said, if they back it up against Wexford, it's a very good win. If Wexford beats them at the weekend, then I think Clare, it's been a very bad year. And I suppose Laois then, I keep saying Laois have earned the right to be in the Liam McCarthy competition. There's no relegation entry this year, so they're going to be there again next year. And I think Laois hurling is definitely going in the right direction.
Okay, and obviously you touched on, we'll touch on it later in the week, but the qualifiers obviously threw up a good one there. We Clare and Wexford would be Davy Fitz have no doubt will have plenty to say about that. So it'll be worth. I'm sure there'll be a few good sound bites from that one. The other game, and the one that was probably billed is the bigger one, and I think we both kind of maybe side it with the fact that there might have been, you know, Dublin might have come out on top of this game, but in the end, Cork bounced back after, you know, the disappointment of the Waterford game and won 125 to 22 points. So I know you watched the game. So what did you make of that one?
I think that a lot of people, myself included, would have questioned Cork a lot after the Waterford match. If you had asked me this last year, I would have thought Cork have an absolutely abundance of great, very talented players, and they're the next team to take the next step. I did slightly change my opinion of them after watching them in the league and watching them in the Waterford match, but I suppose that's why. I suppose probably Saturday summed up why Cork were so frustrating, because they were so good against Dublin and got the win. Then there was really, but they probably. I saw Declan Dalton a few years ago. He looked the real deal underage, and I just think there was a good point. I think 16 of the Cork panel are under the age of 24. I think Kieran Kingston was quoted saying that after the match. So they're maybe in contrast to Clare. They are a team. They've a lot of lads coming at the same age groups now. They haven't really won at underage level, those lads, but they've been very close to winning All Ireland. So I think Cork in that sense have a young team, and they're probably on an upward curve now. If you looked at last day, there was a smart tactical move. We're kind of very contradicting, because saying tactics, you can get two about down them in the football, and you definitely can. But Dublin ditched their sweeper system, I think, and Owen O'Donnell would be the best defender, and I think he picked up Patrick Horgan, and Cork they moved Patrick Horgan out to centre forward, and O'Donnell followed him out, and then they were hitting the ball in early to the full forward line without a sweeper, and I think that Declan Dalton, they got an early goal out of that, and then Dublin brought back the sweeper. Dublin played better when they had the extra man back, but Robbie O'Flynn was suspended against Waterford, and he had a great game for Cork at the weekend too. So I think that it was one of those games at Cork where they needed a bounce back, they needed a performance. They have a very good record against Dublin. Dublin haven't beaten them in the championship for 93 years now, and they needed that big performance. And I think Cork, absolutely, it was a very, very good win for them. I think they won't be anything but positive from that. On the other hand, I think Dublin will be devastated, Gerry. I think they didn't play well at all, and they didn't get going. And I suppose there's two ways to look at Dublin's season. They bet Laois. Laois had beaten them last year, so that was nothing to be taken for granted. They got the win. But against Kilkenny, they came back from 16. They got the draw from a spirited comeback, and I already thought that would have given them enough fight to win this game. But I suppose it was worrying that they were 16 points down against Kilkenny with 49 minutes played from that sense. So, look, I think Dublin, they just don't seem to be able to get that, to take that next step, Gerry, in hurling, that kind of way. They seem to be able to get to the level of being better than maybe Carlow and Dublin and Laois and Westmeath and Offaly and Kerry. Now, Laois did set them back a bit last year, fair enough, but they don't seem to be able to take that next step to push on. I think over the league, they're consistent against teams they might expect to beat in the league, but I just don't think they don't seem to be able to take that next step, Dublin, and this is a bit disappointing. But I'm looking forward now to Cork and Tipperary next weekend. It should be very good, and I think Cork will go into that game now full of confidence. I think Cork. A very good performance in Cork and a very good way to bounce back from the setback against Waterford.
Okay, as you say, Cork and Tipperary was the other qualifier, which again, you add that to the fact that it is obviously now knockout, apart from the two provincial finals. So it will be should be a great game. Again, it's just one of those ones you sort of hear Cork and Tipperary, you just want it in front of thousands of crazy fans, but unfortunately, just the situation it's not to be. So this weekend we had one game in the Joe McDonagh Cup, and the result probably wasn't unexpected, but the fact that it was so close, maybe I'll raise a few eyebrows. Carlow set themselves up nicely with the draw. Should have won against Antrim last weekend, and they managed to just eke out a win this week against Meath. So 122 to 121. It probably finishes any hopes Meath had. But Carlow, keep moving forward and will be one of sort of probably three teams that are still, are vying for them two places in the final. So what do you think of the result?
Well, I just want to go here. The man from around your part of the world, Michael O'Neill, and he was managing the North when they were in the last Euro 2020 campaign, and he actually said that if they didn't win their matches against Belarus and Estonia at the start, the first four games, they weren't going to be in with a shout in the latter stages. So I think that you can apply a similar analogy to Carlow here. I think that they had to win this match if they wanted to be competitive against in the other games. And I think that Colin Bonner will be absolutely thrilled to have gotten over the line here, Gerry. I just think that I'm going to break it down, the Joe McDonagh, into a three-team competition at the moment, because there's three teams left. It's Meath and Westmeath. I think, barring a miracle, those two teams are out of the competition, Gerry, right? So I think that it's gone down to a three-horse race between Carlow, Antrim and Kerry. And I think that if any team is going to win a Joe McDonagh, they're going to have to beat Westmeath and Meath. Like Antrim have beaten Westmeath, Kerry have beaten Meath and Westmeath, and Carlow have beaten Meath now. Like, so I think if Carlow are going to have to beat Westmeath in the last game if they're going to get to the final, and I think Antrim are going to have to beat Meath in the last game if they're going to get to the final. I think it's going to boil down to that, Gerry, to be honest. But going back from that, Carlow had a horrible losing streak. They rectified that with the draw against Antrim. It was a very good result. The draw was, and again, this is Meath really played out their skin. And Nick Weir, as you know, Nick from Rahani, he's a very good coach, and he's doing a very, very good job in Meath, and they're making huge progress since winning the Christy Ring last year. So fair play. They're a county who's really on the up and hurling our Meath. So I think that Carlow will be absolutely thrilled, Gerry. I think that the way I'm doing the maths at the moment is that if Kerry beat Antrim this weekend, Kerry have to play Antrim and has to play Carlow. They're playing Antrim away and Carlow at home. If they win either of those games, Kerry are in a Joe McDonagh final. There's no mess about it. I think if Antrim win their next two games, they get to the final. But Antrim would want to beat Kerry. I think if Antrim beat Kerry this weekend, then Antrim could be eliminated anyway, even if they beat Meath in the last round. If Carlow beat Kerry, and if Kerry are already through, Carlow might fancy themselves to beat Kerry. So I think this game for Antrim at the weekend is absolutely massive against Kerry. It's a semi-final, Gerry, in all but name. This game against Antrim and Carlow is, because. So I think the Joe McDonagh has actually it was a 5-team competition. I think we could almost call it a 3-team competition at the moment. We've been fighting out for 2 places in the final, and I suppose that's what the North happened. It was themselves, Germany and Holland in that group who were competing for the 2 qualification spots. But I think Carlow had to win this game to maybe give themselves a chance of being in that position. They did win the game, and I think that Colin Bonner will be a very, very happy man, I think, at the moment, heading into the last 2 matches.
Okay, so moving to the Christy Ring. So as expected, we've mentioned before that we think this is a competition that Offaly should really be looking to win, and they got their competition underway there with a 32 points to 112 win against Derry. So what do you think Offaly will take from that, or will have learned from that, or do you think it's just a case of getting the job done and getting the job done well?
Yeah, Derry, I think they got a goal in the 41st minute. It brought it back to 6 points. They were 10 points down at half time, and they got a red card then, didn't really help them, to be honest. But Offaly, look, this was a great game. Offaly, I suppose every game is a banana skin for Offaly because it's knockout. There's no second chances now for Offaly. So they got over the line. They absolutely would have taken it. The guy was, I suppose, it was in Newry that match, and it's actually they're back in Newry this weekend playing down. So that will do them a lot of good. I think they'll be expected to be down this weekend. I think, Gerry, the Roscommon side was again. Roscommon had a narrow 3-point win. That was probably as expected as well. But the most interesting thing I was looking forward to in the Christy Ring this year was the draw for the semi-finals, because I think whoever avoided Offaly had a great chance of being promoted, because the fact 2 teams are promoted was a game changer, to be honest, Gerry. And I think that the most unlucky team in Ireland at the moment are the Down Hurling team, because they did really well in Division 2B and they got promoted out of that. So they're in 2A. And in 2A is roughly the same level as the Joe McDonagh Cup, Gerry, because there's 6 teams in 2A and 6 teams in 2A. So they're roughly the same level now. Maybe the top end of 2A is the level for the Joe McDonagh Cup, just say, But down, if they were at the Joe McDonagh, it would have been a huge season of progress. Now, it's unlikely they're going to beat Offaly, but having said that, it's not impossible. It wouldn't be a major shock, So I think that Offaly are going in the right direction. I think everything off the field is right in Offaly at the moment. I think that maybe they have an ambitious chairman and Michael Dyden there at the moment. They're really kind of going. Offaly might be going places at the moment. They might in hurling. I think this is it. If they win this game, I suppose they won't. Unless they win the Christy Ring, will probably be a disaster. But if they win this game, they're back up in the Joe McDonagh. So their one short of the season has been ended. So just before we finish up on that, just that Kildare and Roscommon, what an opportunity for either of those teams to get up to the Joe McDonagh level. I think, Gerry, that Kildare have put in savage work in hurling. Naas is a clown. The towns in Kildare, Selbridge, and these places, they're a bit like we were saying with Down in the football. They seem to be getting hurling strong in the urban parts of Kildare now, and it seems to be only going one way, which is up as well. So fair play to Kildare, the way they're going. I think that it would be just a reward for them to be in the Joe McDonagh Cup and with a chance maybe of winning a Christy Ring final as well. But they're playing Roscommon now. The most interesting game here is that Roscommon beat Kildare last year. Now, Roscommon hurling were in Nicky Racker. I think it was a surprise when they won Nicky Racker a few years ago. So for them to get to the Joe McDonagh would just be absolutely phenomenal. And Roscommon are one of those counties where hurling, we're kind of saying about hurling being strong in stronger places in the urban areas. Roscommon haven't really got that, but there are parts of Roscommon where hurling is a religion, And Roscommon, it's one of those counties where there's pockets of hurling areas where people are fanatical about it, you know. So they would absolutely. I'm delighted that one of those counties, Gerry, can get to the Joe McDonagh Cup, Kildare or Roscommon, and I think that the Christy Ring, that if that game was shown somewhere on the stream, I'd actually watch it, because I actually find myself, though, in hurling, I'm struggling to get excited without crowds. I think maybe it's the fact that they're playing all the games in the bigger stadia that it just seems like there's more. I think the first round, when there was the safety net at the back door and it was in an empty stadium, I just don't think there was the same intensity. Maybe the bigger football games, we've seen them in smaller grounds, and maybe some of the teams might be more vocal on the line. But it seems the football seems to be much more intense at the moment. Now, I suppose this hurling this weekend, the two qualifiers, Clare, Wexford, and Cork and Tip, are going to be quite strong. And I suppose all the other games are semi-finals. There's going to be a lot of stake for those games. And I suppose the only games now we have left with the safety net, well, apart from the Joe McDonagh Cup, are the two provincial finals. And I suppose they should be intense. Well, Galway, Kenny definitely will be. That'll be a very good game of hurling. That'll be do or die for both teams. But Limerick, Waterford will definitely bring a huge intensity. And I think Limerick will as well. So I think that now in the hurling, from next weekend onwards, Gerry, it gets very, very interesting to us. But just going back in that, Offaly are still very much my favourites to win the Christy Ring, but I think the Christy Ring final, I'd say Kildare and Roscommon will be treating this game, Gerry, as a Christy Ring final.
Okay, and so the Nicky Record Cup, there was 2 games in this one. Let me see. Leitrim got the better of Longford, 111 to 12 points, and Tyrone come through against Monaghan, 219 to 112. Which obviously then puts those teams into the semi-finals, where Leitrim will meet Mayo and Tyrone will meet Donegal. So what are you looking at in this competition?
Yeah, Adrian, my friend there from Ringtown, next meet, he's actually coaching the Leitrim hurlers. He's a selector, I think, of the team. So I'm delighted for Adrian. He got the win. I was only talking yesterday, so fair play to Leitrim hurling. They're kind of doing well since they won. I think they won the championship last year. They're doing well since. So fair play to Leitrim. It was great to get It was great progress for them. Longford would be disappointed that they couldn't. They probably would have saw that as a game. They could have won yesterday. But just going back on the other game, Gerry, the Tyrone and Monaghan, I remember doing an interview with a fella who I think he was chairman of the Hurling Development Committee. So it was someone who's high up in hurling. And I asked him what county has the best structure for hurling. And I think the answer I kind of got was Tyrone, Gerry, would you believe, that they were the most improved. The 3 things was Tyrone, Kildare, and Kilkenny were 3 counties I got. And that's why I just think that. Now, I hadn't really seen it with Tyrone, Gerry, to be honest. I hadn't seen them coming strong as a county, but evidently there's been some fantastic work being done in Tyrone in regards to hurling. And I'm delighted for them that they got over the line against Monaghan. And I suppose, can they win a Nicky record? It's hard to know. I think, though, that they're drawing Donegal. They're going to go to Donegal with no fear. I don't know where that game is on, but Mayo are playing Leitrim in the other game. I think Mayo would probably be a wee bit too strong for Leitrim, but Leitrim again going to win nothing to lose. But I think Mayo, they'd be disappointed to be down in the Nicky record, and they'd like to get back up to the Joe McDonagh. I think Donegal are the same. So those 2 teams, and I think Mayo and Donegal would love to get back up to the Christy Ring, even not the Joe McDonagh, but the Christy Ring. And I think then Leitrim and Tyrone, they absolutely love to get to the final in Croke Park. And then I suppose one thing, I'm always split, Gerry, as to whether the tiers are working in hurling. And we've discussed this before, and I don't know. I think the argument I use against the tiered system is that, well, the first one is that the coverage has been absolutely atrocious, Gerry. It has. The coverage we're talking about now is far more than most of those teams are getting. There's no highlights. There's no very little reports. I'm reading papers. There's hardly even a roundup of these games. So I think the coverage-wise, the tiered hurling has been an absolute disaster, Gerry, to be honest, right? Another point I use against this, now this is where I'm a bit split, is that someone has said to me, no county has progressed through the tiered system to be a Liam McCarthy contender. Now, that is a valid point, but I will say in defence, I don't think that those counties are going to progress anyway, Gerry, to be Liam McCarthy contenders. I just think that, as we mentioned earlier, everything has to be going right off the pitch, and everything has to be right before it gets to the stage where a county can progress. Now, the one county in recent years who have done a small bit of progress was probably Dublin, but that was probably all. That's an example of what I'm saying with everything being right off the pitch. Now, if you ask me, Gerry, for my county, who I think are going to be next to be strong Liam McCarthy, of all the teams who haven't been challenging for Liam McCarthy honours, and the team I'd say that's going to be the next in there is going to be Antrim. I think Antrim are one place where they have actually got. I'd say if you ask me what county out of them all has the potential, I'd say Antrim. I think that they have the they have the interest in hurling. They're a hurling only county, and I think that they have a huge population base in the city. There's a huge appetite for hurling in Belfast. The city clubs, O'Donovan, Rossa, and St. John's, and maybe even Galway seems to be improving a lot. So I'd say Antrim are a team that I'd say would be the one potential. But going back in that the tiers, what we're just to be getting away from the point, the tiered system we're talking about. Sligo have come up through the tiers. They've come up 2 competitions last year to go to the Christie Ring. Leitrim seem to come up. They're doing well. Like, I don't know. I think maybe in that sense it is working, Gerry. But I don't know what's the answer. But what do you think yourself personally? Do you think that it's working, the tier system?
Honestly, I don't think so.
No.
It's like whenever, like, it's like sometimes like you're talking about like what's better than winning the Joe McDonagh Cup, and it's, you know, not being in the Joe McDonagh Cup, you know, being in the Liam McCarthy Cup. Like, I think teams want to shoot. You know, you want to shoot as high as you can. I get that, you know, like, I suppose some of the big teams can't be bothered going and putting 20 and 30 points on these teams, and, you know, it's probably hard for teams training to get beat by those sort of points. But ultimately, I know that the idea for football and stuff to come in to go tiered, but like I don't really like it. It's just even whenever Antrim football, they won the old Tommy Murphy Cup, and like, you know, like, it was kind of like, oh well, Antrim won it, but then it was like, oh, we need to do away with this competition. Like, you know, it was almost like nobody cares. But like you go to like some county where like you know, somebody who doesn't have a lot of success, and you say to them, like, you know, in 2 or 3 years' time, you're going to win a big match, and you're going to get the big day out. You know, they would love it. You know, like, even like if you take all the teams in the football, like, it's nearly always the same teams that get to the semi-final. But then you get like a Tipperary that got to the semi-final a few years ago. You get, like, going further back, you get like Fermanagh that got to the semi-final, and, you know, like, people will be talking about that for years. Yeah, you know, people talk about these things, and that's, you know, their memories. Like, even from like a football perspective, the time Antrim got to the Ulster final with Hurling, like, I remember going down, and I remember the time, like, I remember going down to the game at Croke Park, and it was Antrim were playing Cork, and Denny Cahill on Cork's team talk that day. I think he told Corcoran, you know, the Cork were rubbish because they had to bring Corcoran back, and there was other ones got a touch, and I think Antrim were maybe about double digits down before they scored a point. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's frustrating that way, but at the same time, you know, there was a lot of Antrim fans went to Croke Park for an All-Ireland quarter-final that day. Do you know what I mean? And it's something that you want, you know, like, even like the fact the Ulster Championship hasn't been played in years, do you know, like a couple of years, and it's disappointing. You know, it doesn't feel to me like it's a priority to really grow the game.
Well, if you ask me, Gerry, like, to be honest with you, I'm trying to make arguments for and against, but I actually think that one of my friends has these championships christened the B specials, like, obviously up, you know, with neck of the woods, that would have a bad name, and I think that's what he's trying to say. The B competitions and all these special competitions, like, they're a bit of a waste of time, like, to be honest with you. Now, I think that's unfair. I think the old way used to be very, very bad, when you used to have an All-Ireland B championship and it was knockout, and teams were gone after one match, and there was no one at the match. There was no to be honest with you, Gerry, I hate to say it for the players there, but I just don't think these competitions are working. I'd be on your line, and I just think that it's a disaster bringing it into the football, to be honest with you. I just don't. I think the only credit I will give to hurling is that teams start in this competition, so you can set out your target that you want to win a Christie Ring or a Joe McDonagh or a Nicky Rackard or a Rory Maher. But in the football, it's actually, you have to lose a match to be in it. So it's actually straight away, it's a losers competition in the football. There's no incentive saying, we're going to go out, lads, and we're going to lose the first round, or we're going to win a B competition. You know, that kind of way. Like, so, no, it's not my thing at all. And as you said there, like, if you ask an Antrim fan, in 2008, they won a Tommy Murphy Cup. I think, was it 07 or 08? But whatever year they won the Tommy Murphy.
Lost the final one year, and then we won it the next year.
I think it might have been 07, they lost the final, and 08 they won it, or was it the other way around? But whatever, just go, that's not the point. But the point was, if you ask any Antrim football stalwart, and there are loads of them, would you have rather won it in 08, the football, at the Tommy Murphy, or would you have rather beaten Donegal and beaten Cavan in 2009 and get to the final? I can guarantee it, not 99, but 100% of them would say it was much better winning in the Ulster Championship. And I'd say all 30 of the players thought that as well. Do you know, like, that's what I don't like, Gerry, is that, and if they do it in the hurling, like the hurling, the Christie Ring was meant to be the be-all and all. It was going to be a great promotion. I can remember my own county, Westmeath, won it the first year, and they bet down in the final. And it summed up a lot of what's being said, is that, like, Westmeath won it that day, and it was before Cork and Clare in the All-Ireland semi-final. That was the first year of it. And I remember that day, Westmeath won it. It felt like something. Westmeath had won a trophy in Croke Park, but then Westmeath won it in 2007, and it was down there again. It was a bad to win it but going back on that, Westmeath actually bet Dublin in 2006 in the Leinster Hurling Championship, and again, that game was actually on telly. I think what happened that day, there was a football game was called off with the weather, and it was an absolute monsoon deluge in Portlaoise, and Westmeath, that match ended up being televised with it, and Westmeath bet them, and I can guarantee the players would much rather have won that than have been in a B competition. And I just think that Westmeath played Kilkenny in South, and they bet Wexford and Kilkenny in the minors and under 21 respectively. And I'd say all of those players would much rather have beaten those teams than win any sort of B competition. I don't know. I suppose, though, going back what Antrim with the football, the fact that they won Tommy Murphy, the next year they got to an Ulster final, maybe it's a sign that they're making progress, but it's not for me. Although, having said that, Gerry, the best competitions in the GAA are probably the national leagues because they are tiered. So I just don't think it works in hurling, but because I just don't think there's an interest. But you made a very good point there. The Ulster Championship was a great championship, and I think that's a far better way. And maybe if they could have moved the teams from, like, maybe moved the likes of teams who maybe aren't good enough, like, just say for Kerry hurlers, for example, if they're not, if the GAA is going to tell them they're not good enough to play in the Munster Championship, then why can't they? I'd say that there's no reason Kerry couldn't play in an Ulster Hurling Championship. Now, obviously, there's geographical reasons for that, but, like, and maybe Antrim playing in the Leinster Hurling Championship, I thought it was a great idea, Gerry. I think that was a real forward step for these counties, moving them into maybe crossing the province, moving Galway into Leinster. I think it really revived the championship. So I think that's a better way to go. And I think what was a great triumph for hurlers from the so-called week of hurling counties was the old Railway Cup, where you could represent your province in the competition. I know Brendan Murtagh, and he's an absolute gentleman. I'd say Westmeath's greatest ever hurler, but to give him the ultimate compliment, Gerry, in 2008, Kilkenny had won 3 in a row, and they were one of the best teams ever. I'd say they were probably the greatest hurling team ever to grace the earth. But Brendan Murtagh played for Leinster that year, and there was 5 other Kilkenny forwards around him, and he was the one Westmeath forward out of the 6. There was out of the 6 forwards, 5 of them were on that greatest Kilkenny team, and 1 was from Westmeath. And I don't know that he win the Railway Cup medal or not, but that's not the point. The point is that was a great recognition for a hurler from a lower county, and I'm sure you'd agree with me. Like, for the Antrim, like, to represent the province like that was a serious achievement. And if you look at the likes of Shane Conway and Kerry, super hurler, I'd say he would absolutely love to represent Munster in the Railway Cup. And I think that's a much better feat for those lads. They can, same with the best hurlers from Mayo and Roscommon and Leitrim and Sligo, they could represent Connaughton, maybe a very good strong team Munster team. Like, would you go along with that, Gerry?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a good idea to have recognition for some of the the lesser counties. Like, even from our own perspective, like Neil McManus from Antrim, like, he would probably go on to any panel in the country. But he's born in a place, and I've no doubt he's very proud of where he's born, and he's represented Cushendall and he's represented Antrim. He's been fantastic over the years. But a guy like that, probably he deserves his day in the sun, and it'd be that if that's an Ulster team going against. I know the kind of what they get as their recognition is I know a few times the guys from Cushendall and that they've played in that shinty and hurling thing that they do.
I wouldn't. I don't think it. I just think that, but going back to McManus, like, the only thing in McManus's favour is his career is that he's got to done on the big stage with his club in Cushendall, to be fair to McManus. But I think that this year I'd love to see Antrim win a Joe McDonagh Cup for him, because he's a type there that deserves to win a trophy in Croke Park on All-Ireland final day. And I remember I was kind of saying earlier how Antrim were the one county that had resources to be very strong. I remember reading an interview with Brendan Crossan when I was over in London last year. It was in the Irish News, but he did it with McManus, and McManus spoke of being in, I think it was 05 and 06, and a very, very good Antrim team. I think they lost to Galway by a point and Limerick by a point in All-Ireland quarterfinals, and he thought that he was certain Antrim would be competing for All-Irelands when he was playing senior hurling, and it hasn't transpired at all. I suppose that day you mentioned they played Cork in 2010. That was probably close if they got to an Ireland quarter final, but they had knocked out Dublin that year, so that was it. And Dublin won Leinster not too long after, so that was a really big achievement for Antrim. But I even mentioned the club scene there, how strong the Antrim clubs are. Like, they really are. I put it this way, Gerry, if there was one county where everything is right off the pitch, it's Antrim, I have to say, in terms of structures, in terms of population, in terms of playing, clearly being strong. So, look, I suppose just going back on the tier, we'll just give a mention to Louth. Louth had a good win against Cavan, and they're playing Fermanagh in the Laurie Mark. I think it's this weekend, so we might look at that game in a good bit.
I think they actually, as far I've seen a tweet. It was I originally seen it was scheduled for this weekend, and then I seen a tweet saying that it's going. I think it was like the 20-something now in Croke Park. But I don't know whether they're maybe doing like the semi-finals or the final of the Christy Ring, like your record, and the Laurie Meagher. Because I did, I seen it. I was looking in the GAA.ie. I just have a quick look at it and see. But I think it's been changed. Yeah, there it is there. Final to be played between the 28th and the 29th for Fermanagh and Louth, which, you know, big day out, Croke Park. You know, it's what every player wants. You know, so fair play to for getting there.
I think very. There's 5 tiers in the hurling. I think 5 tiers is actually probably better than 2 tiers nearly, because I think at least, like, if you put Louth and Fermanagh in a tier 2 competition, even if you split it in 2 16s, like, you're still not going to win it. I suppose this time they can win it. So I think the one thing I will say about the hurling tier is that the coverage, from a coverage point of view, it's been an absolute disaster. But from a hurling point, it's probably a lot better than what they're going to propose in the football, to be honest. Do you know?
I think it's just kind of like one sort of thing. The point I would make is, you ask obviously whether it's working or whether it's not working. The very fact that, you know, since they've introduced tier championships in the hurling, they've changed it so many times, suggests to me that the GAA probably think that it's not really working, and they're trying to find the right format. Like, and no one ever, like, I think at the very beginning, I think there was maybe only 3, like the Liam McCarthy, Christy Ring, and Nicky Record. I think the Joe McDonagh and Laurie Meagher come in later. And then obviously I know you're saying about they're looking to put a couple of teams extra in the Liam McCarthy, and more. Is the Joe McDonagh going to be 6 or 7 next year or something? And it's changing. So I think it still feels to me like it's a canvas that they're still working on.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be an advocate for it. I just don't think that they're taking off at all. Like that, I just don't know. Like, are they the way to hold it? I wouldn't be. I feel very sorry for them in those competitions, and I suppose the type of thing is, like, if you're a dual player in those counties, I just don't think you're going to want to play in. If you're a good dual player, I don't think. I think now a lot of it is probably inside the county that they mightn't be interested in hurling. But, like, I suppose even we're saying we don't even know the dates for these competitions format. I think the reason we don't know it is because it's probably not being released, and it's probably not being released because not enough people are interested in it. You're not. I don't think these competitions really have ever got going, Gerry. To be honest, and it's very hard to see that situation changing in the near future.
Okay, well, I think I've kept you long enough for now. We'll obviously be back hopefully towards the end of the week, probably Thursday or that, and looking ahead to the upcoming weekend. I think there's a bit. I know definitely there's a bit more hurling at the weekend. I think there's the qualifiers, and possibly I think the provincial finals are maybe on this weekend. But I think as usual to Conor for, you know, taking his time to explain a lot of this stuff to me and to keep me right on what's happening. So thanks very much for that. And obviously, you know, anybody that's watching it, and obviously, you know, feel free to get in contact. There's the comments, and obviously I'm easy to find on social media. So if you have any questions or anything you want to add, feel free to do so. But until then, thanks for now, and thank you for watching.